current events, and kind of what the Air Force plays into it now. And obviously, we always hear a lot on the news, especially recently. China's flying fighter jets into Taiwanese airspace constantly. They just had a massive exercise where they openly admitted they were wargaming an invasion. Obviously, Russia's got the war in Ukraine. The Iranians are up to all sorts of things. How you, as an expert on the topic of air power, the average American probably has no idea. They might hear people say that the Chinese are just as good or they're very close, or the Russians have this or that. What's the actual real world gap of what America can do when it comes to bringing air power to a war and what China, Russia, or Iran can do?
Sure. Well, let me say it depends, and you probably never truly know until you actually get the chance to hit a merge with somebody and then figure out just how good they are. Um, Russia and China obviously have very capable aircraft, right? And I think one of the issues that we have sometimes is we focus on the capabilities of the airframe, right? Well, the airplane doesn't matter. The dude that's in it is the guy that's going to make it happen or not. And you don't have to necessarily be in the best aircraft to win in an engagement. If you know what your strengths are, if you have more experience, if you know how to fight in a particular way, you can do some really good work. So, the biggest difference in a training perspective, and this is what I used to always tell my young guys, because we get a brief from Intel about the Su-30 MKK and all of its capabilities and this, that, and the other. And don't get me wrong, dude, they're very capable aircraft, great radars, missiles. It's going to be a fight, right? Um, but I used to tell my young guys, you're an American trained fighter pilot. Like when you hit the merge with an adversary aircraft, you win. That's it. There's no second place when you merge, man. You win by default. You have to win. And if you can't win, then you probably fucking deserve to die. And that's the kind of mindset we try to build. But the difference in the tactics is the Russians and the Chinese, as far as I know, I don't know if anything's shifted because I've been out for 6 years now, but doctrinally, they're very dependent on what we call GCI, ground control intercept. So they have, a guy on the ground with a radar or their version of AWACS or whatever that's going, hey, you need to go over here and you need to target these guys. We don't do it that way. We're very fluid in our execution. It's not rigid at all. And in the fighter pilot community, you make your money on being able to make really good, smart audibles and change flow decisions, tactics, real time to match what you're seeing from an adversary. And we're very good at it. And so, we're there being controlled primarily by AWACS. For us, AWACS or any kind of GCI is really just a support asset to what we're trying to do. So they don't tell me where to go. They don't tell me what to target. They're there to support my game plan. So there's a level of fluidness that comes in our execution, especially like in an air-to-air tactical realm, that they don't have, and that's a huge advantage for us. Huge advantage for us.
And I'm so not well educated on when it comes to the fighter or stealth bombers. But one of the things that when I read about things or watch the news, it seems that what really is keeping the United States so far more advanced is the amount of stealth aircraft compared to the rest of the world. I mean, as far as I know, China just for the first time ever put their first stealth bomber.
Yeah. And who knows how good it is.
And who knows how good it is. How important is the fact that we have F-35s, F-22s, the B-2, B-21s, and they just don't have it in large numbers or don't have it at all?
Well, it's critically important in a couple of different respects. So the issue with stealth is that in order to stay stealthy, you have to carry everything internally. And they don't have a lot of room on the inside of those airplanes for things, So the problem with stealth, or one of the drawbacks of it, is you don't have a lot of missiles to take to a fight, right? So, we're in an F-16. If I'm going to do straight air to air, I can go out with 5 AMRAAMs and a 1 AIM-9X heat-seeking missile. And across my 4-ship, I've got, 20 AMRAAMs, radar-guided missiles to throw down track. You're not getting those same numbers with the internal carriage capabilities of an F-22 or an F-35. Super stealthy, and what most people, I think, on the civilian side don't realize is those guys actually get a lot closer to shoot adversary aircraft than you would think, because they only have so many missiles to give. They try to get close so the missile has a higher potential to kill than by shooting. If you shoot farther away, you can run the missile out of energy. If they maneuver, it may not catch up to them. Different thing. They get really close when they shoot, so that PK of that missile is higher. And the issue with Taiwan is always going to be the tyranny of distance, right? It's just amassing not just the force, but the supplies you need, the number of missiles, the number of bombs, and things like that you need in order to mitigate the potential number of numbers that could be coming, across the strait. That said, like, the F-35 is phenomenal, and let me think what I can say here. What I'll say is the F-35 was never meant to do four ship operations like I was in the F-16. I don't know. I have no, but if you read the papers or if you follow defense industry news at all, there's a number of companies that are testing subscale stealthy style drones. And my guess is,
was gonna ask
yeah,
you about
and my
that.
guess is, here's how you solve the internal carry problem, right? Is you now, instead of a four ship of F-35s out there defending a lane for Taiwan, you've got a four ship of F-35s that each has four subscale drones that are carrying 6 AMRAAMs, right? And now your AMRAAM problem is solved, because now, across a four ship, you have 100 plus missiles to send downrange. And the F-35 radar and the link capability that it has is so good that it's just going to feed targeting data to those things. And I don't think they're there yet. It's probably, still 5, 7, 8, I don't know how many years down the road, but I think that that's eventually what they're going to get to.
I know that when they put the B-21 Raider on display, it was 6 months ago or whatever, when Boeing did the big unveiling, one of the things they talked about, which blew my mind, and again, it probably won't blow yours, you might already even know, but they said that plane, Boeing says that plane can fly over a battle space. It can scan all the information about where the enemy is, where their submarines are if they have them, and it can shoot that information in a nanosecond to
Yep.
everyone who needs it. And
Yeah.
essentially, even if it never drops a bomb, it's capable of transmitting essentially a real-time map of everything they need to know. That level of technology to me is just mind-blowing. And
Yeah.
it's so cool.
Yeah, what most people don't realize is the F-35 is very similar in the sense that aircraft has sensors all over it, and it has an ability to do some of those types of things as well, without getting into the weeds about what it can and can't do.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's been a focus of the Air Force for a long time, and the buzzword, at least it was when I was in, with sensor fusion. They're trying to get a way to have all these sensors kind of bring everything together and then fuse a solid battle space picture together that we can be reactive to. So, yeah.
What do you think the United States has to do in order to make sure that that technological edge when it comes to air power, we never allow another country to come in and overtake us in that realm?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's hard, right? Because technology advances so rapidly now that, the gains that you may have made in the 90s with, laser guided bombs or GPS weapons don't last for 5 or 7 years now before people catch up, right? They last for 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. That said, I mean, without getting into a philosophical conversation, and I'm a little bit of a dork, so I could go into the weeds on this one, but I don't know that China's ever going to be able to match our capability as far as what we can develop, because I don't think the Chinese party will ever allow the flexibility for innovation that is required to do that. That's why they steal everything, right? Like,
Exactly.
if you economists kind of look at economies, and this is in general terms, and I'm sorry that I'm speaking in general terms, but you have kind of an agrarian stage to an agricultural to an industrial, and then to an innovative, right? So China is very much an industrial economy. a manufacturing based economy, right? They've never made the jump to innovative. We made the jump to innovative in the 90s with the dot com, right? So when you hear politicians going, "Oh, we need to bring manufacturing back to the United States," it's never going to happen, y'all. We that train left the station 30 years ago, right? It's and you see it now with AI, right? And all these other things, right? We're an innovative economy because we have the freedom of expression to go try that stuff, right? There's nothing regulating folks away from coming up with new things and having ideas. I don't think with the current structure of the CCP that there's any way that they ever make that leap. And that alone will always keep us ahead,
Number one,
in
I
my
agree with
estimation,
I agree with you
my
very
humble
much so.
estimation.
And I know there's been a lot of news reports that the Chinese military might not be nearly as ready and capable as Xi has been led to believe because of gross incompetence down the
Well, look at
ranks.
yeah, look at Ukraine, man, right? So we think Russia's this powerhouse. And I'll never forget this because um as a weapons officer, I had to understand how the army does things to a certain extent. And when you remember when Russia was lining up to go into Ukraine at the beginning, I don't know if you remember, but the media was talking about how they were lining up all these battalion tactical groups, right? BTGs. That BTG term was used over and over and over again. And that made absolutely no sense to me because the Russians follow us doctrinally pretty close to how we. So like the hardest thing to do and I'm going to talk army now, even though I'm not an army guy. And so if the army guys want to throw spears and I'm wrong, you can tell me. But um, like mass armored movement is one of the hardest things to coordinate, right? Because there's a huge command and control piece to that that has to be established, right? And the fact that the Russians, instead of staying with like, a corps to division to echelon to battalion to whatever that structure is, they just lined up a bunch of BTGs and pushed the go button because they thought it was going to go like Crimea did, and they were going to meet no resistance. And then everything fell apart, right? So I think we tend to overestimate the capabilities of our adversaries to a certain extent, which I'm fine with. Let's keep doing that. Let's
Right.
train to the scariest environment imaginable, right? Let's make the worst assumptions and let's train to that level of execution and to that level of threat, because then when it's not, we're just going to have an easier time.
I that is a that's the classic saying, prepare for the worst,
Yeah.
hope for the best.
Yeah.
I know that's very, very cliche. I only have two more questions left for you. When it comes to foreign adversaries, is China the one that Americans should be the most concerned about, or is it a different nation?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think, any of that could change overnight with newfound nuclear capabilities. I think right now it's China, in my humble opinion. I mean, I'm not a domain expert in any of this, so take that for what it's worth. Um, but what I would say to people too, though, is just recognize that really outside of China's inherent nuclear capability, they're really a regional threat. Like this is the other thing that separates the United States military from any other military in the world is our ability to project power. We can, dude, we can pick up and move the entire air forces and wings in 48 hours. We have
Crazy.
aircraft carriers that can be on location in 48 hours. Our ability, the cargo logistical abilities of the Air Force and the Army to move things into a theater and set things up super fast to support sustained operations is second to none. The ability for us to refuel, like our ability to project power is so unmatched that until somebody comes close to being able to do that, it's hard for me to consider outside of nuclear like a real present threat to the shores of the United States, if that makes sense.
It totally does, and I actually agree with you 100%. That's why I always get a little bit of a chuckle when people talk about this country is going to do X, Y, and Z to the United States, and they can
Yeah.
barely move. I mean, war in large degrees is about logistics, and if you can't move food, fuel, weapons, men, ammunition, you're not going to win any war against
Nope.
a powerful nation. And
That's right.
there's nothing to suggest the Chinese, as far as I know, have the logistical ability to do all of that because they've never been shown to do it before. Not to say
Yeah.
they couldn't do it.
Right.
They just haven't done it.
and I think they're trying to get there eventually. They've built a number of aircraft carriers over the last several years. They're trying to come up with ways to project power. But when you go back to just their standard strategy too, the seven concentric rings and all the things that they're doing, it's all in defense of mainland, right? And so they can project power pretty well in their region, but their ability to project power globally outside of their economy or any kind of nuclear exchange, that's it. That's how they play. They play in economics and then a possible nuclear threat. But their ability to project power outside their region, I think, is pretty limited.
Well, this has been a